Well, welcome everybody, and this is another webinar in the Psych Up series. We'll be putting out one a month and with various topics that we believe are really quite important to our everyday functioning and being able to get through life in a state of well-being, being able to get our tasks completed well, things that we want to do, things that are important to us, goals that are important to us, but also our interacting with others well and assisting others to get done what they need to get done. So what more important topic than effective communication? And it's really quite interesting when we have a look at communication. It's something that we do regularly. And it can vary between communicating with ourselves. We've got self-talk running on in our head, telling ourselves certain things, giving ourselves instructions, beating ourselves up about something that didn't go well, or patting ourselves on the back for something perhaps that did go really quite well. But a lot of the time we will be obviously communicating with others, and that could be communicating with others in our family unit, communicating with a partner, communicating perhaps with children, and also on another level, another platform is communicating in the workplace with others. So it really is a very important topic, and I think the first thing to do is to take some time every now and then to use what we call reflective practice, and that basically means to reflect upon how we're going with our communication. And it's often easy, I think, in terms of reflective practice, to ask ourselves three questions: why, what, and how. Why are we communicating? What do we want to communicate? And how are we communicating that message? If we look at more broadly, I suppose, at why we communicate, it's an interesting scenario to think about. Human beings are social animals. It's almost like we need to communicate to keep that social bonding going, to keep that connection with other people. And certainly it is so important that we communicate to keep a constructive relationship going with others. Without good communication, it is almost impossible to run solid relationships. And when we have a look around the world and we have a look at things that aren't going too well in certain parts of the world, it's often because of very poor communication. And sometimes that's delivered in a cultural context and at other time in other contexts. But when we don't communicate well, when we communicate from an aggressive, defensive perspective, or we communicate from a passive, defensive perspective. And by that I mean aggressive defensive perspective is where we are trying to just keep some sort of security needs going as a human being that we feel we need through building our status. And often that is, we want to build our status so that we are seen to be right, that we are seen to be the head person, the way we want to do it is the way to do it. And at other times, we can communicate out of an aggressive, defensive perspective with the belief that if we don't communicate in a manner which says we need to do it this way, we need to do it my way, and we need to continue to do it my way, then it won't get done properly. So it's not all about growing our own status and looking good. Sometimes it is about trying to do the right thing. But when we're communicating in an aggressive manner, that often gets washed away, and people won't come with us on that journey. They won't listen to the music. They won't get the right idea from the message, rather. They won't listen to our message. And then they'll turn off, or they will come back at us from a very aggressive perspective. When we're in too much of a passive defensive mode, what tends to happen there is that we tend to be too approval seeking, quite conventional. We'll avoid bringing up things that we might not necessarily feel comfortable in bringing up, but feel that we do need to bring up, or that things won't get done as effectively as they need to if we don't bring them up. But we stay away because of often of the anxiety or the fear around what will happen if my message isn't perceived properly. So, and we often also communicate to get things done, to get our message out, to understand others. And it's part of that connection, obviously, with other people. And so it's also a great opportunity, communication, to get to know others. And for that to occur, we need a perspective that says it's not just about me, and it's not just about what I am wanting out of this for myself, but it is also about what I want for others, and what do I really firmly believe that others need and that others may want from me. And the way to find that out, obviously, is to communicate. So, what are some important areas of communication that we need to be aware of? Well, basically, there's areas of assertiveness, and being assertive is basically about trying to get the things in life and have the things in life that are important to us, to get our message across, to stand our ground on issues that might be very important to us. The opposites, I suppose, of assertiveness at one end are being aggressive, where we want to get our own way and to hell with other people, or we don't mind putting other people down when we're communicating with them to try and get our own way, or to point out that we were right, you're wrong, and therefore there's something awfully wrong with you. The other end of that scale, and the other side of assertiveness, is being passive. And that is where we let others have their way, get their way, and we are very meek and mild in what it is that we might do and say and communicate. So we don't get our own way. So our own, our own needs might not be being met, and we might let our own rights go untapped, and we might give that away to others so that they get everything they want, and we get very little of what we may want or need. So we'll talk about assertiveness, what's important there. The styles of communication, I've already touched on those. Are we constructive in our styles of communication, or are we more aggressive defensive or more passive defensive in our styles? How can we go about trying to get our message across to others? What might be some important things just to think about in that regard? What about non-verbal communication? Is that as important? Is it as important as verbal communication? Is it more important? Or is it just part of a system of communication that we need to be aware of in the manner in which we are communicating with others? Pardon me. And so they're going to be the topics that I'm going to touch on as part of this webinar today. So let's take on the whole concept of being assertive. In order to be assertive, we need a reasonable level of self-regard and self-efficacy. That is, belief in ourselves to be able to do and have what it is that we want in life. And that way we will stick up for ourselves, we will back ourselves. We won't worry about whether at the end of the day we make mistakes or not, because we have a growth mindset approach to assertive communication, which means if we get things right and it all works out well, great, we can give ourselves a pat on the back. If we don't get things so right and it doesn't work out well, then what we can do is we can see that as a learning opportunity. What might have gone well in the situation, in our communication attempt, what didn't go so well, and what is it that we need to do better in terms of learning, having that as a learning experience, and do better next time we go about trying to communicate. Now, assertive communication basically starts with an assumption that I'm okay and you're okay. Not that I'm okay and you're not okay, or I'm not okay and you're okay, or worse still, I'm not okay and you're not okay. It's very difficult to be assertive and stand up for ourselves, to get our message across in a manner that doesn't put someone else down or doesn't really make us look like we're being very, very tentative, and that it might be easy for someone else to take advantage of our inability to be assertive and our safety position that we may take in being quite passive in the situation. Now, when we are aggressive, it's often associated with certain body language, and it's, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what you've done wrong, this is where you messed up, this isn't what it's all about, this isn't what I expected. And we can actually frown, and maybe we get all tense and we go red in the face, and we can come across as quite aggressive and quite, at times, unfortunately, quite bullying of others. And one of the other things we do then is we close our mind off to hearing from others, and maybe hearing their perceptions of the situation, hearing their take on what went down, and maybe therefore being able to broaden our view or gain more information on what's happened. And maybe we could then temper our approach to a particular situation. So generally what happens with an aggressive form of communication, if someone else in it will either become aggressive back at us, as if to say, well, don't come that way to me, or they'll go passive in it and they'll just go to ground, and then the communication stops anyway, and it's not a win-win. When we are aggressive, it's often a, I want to win, I want you to lose in this situation. When we're passive, it's often is, I'm prepared to lose and you might win. And that is kind of okay with me. And it might not be that it is okay with me, but I'm going to let that happen anyway, because I just don't have self-regard to stand up for myself. And so assertive communication is standing up for ourselves, as I was saying, but not putting other people down. It's trying to get a win-win situation out of a particular event that may have occurred, and through a piece of communication that we want to go well. Now, assertive communication runs something along the lines of, when you do such and such, I feel, or look, Sue, there's just something I've been wanting to talk to you about. I really value our friendship. It's been great. It's been fantastic over the years, but I just feel it's hitting a few hurdles at the moment. I just wanted to speak to you about that to see what your take on it is. So what I wanted to do was just sort of let you know what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling about the situation, and a few solutions that I see that I think may fix it for me. And hopefully, if you have been feeling the way I've been feeling, that it'll help fix it for you. But I'd be very interested in your comments about what I have to say and what you think, and what you feel some solutions might be as well, and whether you agree on me, whether you've thought about this as an issue, or whether you haven't. And we do that in a voice tone that is not raised. We're not yelling at someone. We're not talking down to someone. We're especially not pointing at someone. We just got relaxed body language. Our arms are unfolded. We've got a relaxed, hopefully a relaxed style on our face, so that we're not frowning, we're not uptight, and we're appearing to be that we are not wanting this to turn into a fight. We're wanting to just really be able to discuss the facts with someone and work through to a conclusion that is solution focused, not a character assassination of someone, but often an aggressive approach to a piece of communication can be. So that comes back, I suppose, then and builds into this whole thing around styles of communication. Now, when we have what we call a constructive style of communication, and we're communicating with someone else well, and we're wanting to get a win-win with someone else, then there's 4 areas that we need to look at and reflect upon of how we're going, because a constructive style of communication might be there to get tasks done, and to get tasks done better than maybe we've been getting them done in the past, or they could well be there to build relationships with others that we think might not be as good as could be, or that we're just wanting to solidify and make even better. Now, when we are communicating well from a task perspective, our communication is achievement focused. What is it that we want to achieve? What is it that we want to do? What do we feel are some of the solutions? What might we feel are the building blocks to getting something done, what is the process that we might need to communicate to someone else that we feel we need in place to get something done and to get something done well. We are often self-actualizing, and by self-actualizing I mean we're wanting to do it in a positive, energy-injecting manner where we feel good about communicating with someone to get better solutions. We do it in a way where we are wanting to show initiative, so we're open, we're flexible to new ways or perhaps better ways of doing something, thinking about something. So we need to be open, obviously, to listening to others. We're humanistic and encouraging in the manner in which we interact with someone. So what we're doing is we're helping them grow and develop. That's the focus. A good focus of our communication is we're helping someone else grow and develop themselves to understand better about something or to find better solutions to something or to feel more comfortable in a situation. And we're collaborative in the manner in which we go about it. It's so that it's not just us talking at someone, it's ourselves putting forward our point of view, having a discussion about that, listening to someone else's point of view, having a discussion about that, and being with the other person, trying to understand where the other person is at before we actually do with the other person, which is around finding solutions to what is going on, to what is happening, so that we allow time to really fully understand what the issues are. Someone else can understand, hopefully has the time to ask questions, to get to know where we're coming from. And then we move on into good problem solving, decision making. And that being with gives us the time to reality test. Is the way I have been feeling about it the right way? Or have I overlooked facts that someone else has brought up? And do I need to be more general with the way that I now, and slightly different with my focus on how I get a solution to this situation, because I have been listening to others and just talking at them, and I've learned some facts that are really helpful, I think, in putting together a solution that we hopefully together will be able to work towards. And then the other two styles that communication, the ones I've already mentioned earlier, which are aggressive defensive styles, which are about us, which are status driven, and they can be styles of perfectionistic. You know, people have got to understand exactly what I'm getting through to them. They've got to understand exactly why this is so important to me, and I have to give them all and every fact about what has happened if I'm going to really get my message through. It can be very competitive, that form of communication, and at its most detrimental stage is I win, you lose. That's what I'm looking at here, rather than a win-win situation. It can be very power focused. You listen and you listen to me. I'm older than you. I've got more experience than you. I know more than you do. So it can be very power-based. And the other thing, of course, is that we could turn into being the cynic. And that is that our form of communication is just purely and simply pointing out to someone what went wrong, why something won't work. We're not really interested in listening to their opinion, but just telling them what we think ought to happen in this situation. And so we can easily be seen in that form of communication as a cynic, negative, as an energy vampire rather than an energy injector into a situation. Now, in the passive defensive styles, we can avoid bringing things up, which is the classic way that we can often go about communicating with others, because we think people might not like what we say and we might mess a friendship up, or people might get really put out by what's happened. We can be very dependent on others to make decisions, because we might want to make a decision that is not popular with someone else, that others don't like, and we don't want to be held to blame if the decision we bring up through our communication doesn't work for ourselves or others. We can be a little conventional in the way we go about it, and we don't see the bigger picture. We just talk about how people should have done these, rules, the expectations, the way we always do things around here. And we stick firmly within that rather than perhaps discussing broader ideas about what a solution might look like, and also an assessment of why things may have broken down, if that's what we're communicating about, and what we could do about that in terms of making sure that our communication is much more open and beneficial for all moving forward, and we can become very approval seeking. in our communication, and that is wanting to say things that will appeal to others because we want to be loved and liked by everybody we come across. And if we have that belief system that sits there, then often we'll just do and say what we think other people want us to say and do, and therefore our own values might be really severely hampered, and we might have different ideas. We might feel there are much better ways of going about, getting a result, of getting a solution to the situation, but we may not bring it up. So they're the some different styles of communication that we can get into. And of course, the constructive style is the one that we want to be in most of the time. Now, in terms of getting our message across, pardon me, in our communication, it's very important that we indicate to someone, and this is both through body language and initially what we're setting up, to indicate the context of how we want to go about and what we want the communication to be all about. And that context needs to be in a situation is a win-win, or a situation of expressing ourselves so that, and having the other person express them, so that we indicate to someone up front before we start to deliver any content about what we want to talk about, but we deliver the context of what it is, of why we want to say what it is and how we want to say it and how we would like the other person to communicate with us. And that is that we want a win-win situation. We are going to put forward what we feel the situation is and some of our feelings about it. We would then like them to explore that with us, to ask more questions if they need to get more clarity. And then what we would do is like to the other person to put forward their perspective if they agree with us, if they don't agree with, if they have a different angle on the situation and a different take on the situation, and then what it is, and then to get some feedback from us in terms of what we think of what they've said. Do we need more clarification? And then finally to work on a adaptable, positive and solution-oriented, focused through our communication to what it is that we would like to get done. So certainly it is that we need to go in to prepare. Proper preparation prevents poor performance, or the 5 Ps that people often talk about in preparing well for a situation. So make sure that we prepare well to try and get a win-win. If we know the person, what are the sorts of ways they like to be interacted with? What is the sort of communication that they like? Do they like things to be very logical or rational? Do they like things to be very much based on feeling, on the consequences of what actions are all about? Are they big picture? Do they like to hear the big picture of what we're talking about before we drill into the nitty-gritties of that big picture and the steps and the things that happen within it? Or are they more the builder rather than the architect, and they like to build on a story? So they like to hear the nitty-gritties of the stories, building to the bigger picture of where we might be getting to and why we think the parts of the story that we're telling in our communication are important in setting a scene for overall what it is that why we think we need to get this message across, and why this message is so important to others. Now, I suppose also to build into the whole communication process then is non-verbal communication. And this is, once again, where prior preparation is very important to stop poor performance, because if we are going into a situation where we're going to communicate with somebody about something, and we're all uptight, we're distracted about something that's just happened, we're feeling angry, we're irritable, we're feeling flat, we're feeling a little bit fatigued from what has gone on before, then it's not likely that our body language will be terribly impressive. And what we might be giving the person, the attitude is that we're not really interested in being involved in this conversation. And that could be that we're still playing on our phone and answering messages from some sort of situation that has gone a little haywire. It could be that we're looking down and not maintaining eye contact with a person that says, yes, I'm listening to you. Yes, I'm interested in what you're saying. So it could well be that we are not showing that we are mindful with them at the time and taking on board what they're saying and really interested in being where we are and having a sensible and smart conversation with them. It might be that this is an intrusion. I would rather we're giving them the indication that we would rather be somewhere else, that we really don't have time for this now. This is not important. What the hell do they think they're doing, asking us to do this? If we are out of sorts when we go into communication situation with someone, it's often better to put it off, to say, look, I'm sorry, but some things have come up that I really need to deal with now. Terribly sorry about this, but I am going to have to put our session off. Now, I don't want to push it off for too long. So when's the next opportunity you've got to sit down with me to discuss this issue? Because it is important, I feel, for both of us to discuss it. I appreciate you bringing it up. I appreciate you wanting to make the time to discuss this. So when would be the next time that we could actually sit down? And I do apologise for not being able to carry through now. But I just feel I'm not in the right state of mind. There's just some things I've got to finish off so that I can give you my whole attention when we start to discuss this important topic. So body language is important, and one of the ways to quickly, if you like, get our body language right is to make sure that we're not just remaining emotional, running on with negative self-talk. So a really quick way to do that is to take a couple of deep breaths. And as we breathe out, just say the word relax or calm to ourselves. Do that 3 or 4 times, and then just put a small smile on our face because we may have been frowning, and just hopefully let our frontalis muscles up here start to unwind and smooth out so we don't look stressed, we don't look uptight, we don't have a facial expression that says you're really interfering with other things, I want to be doing it now, or I really don't want to be here doing this with you. But it looks like that we are relaxed and that we're able to tune in with the person that we're wanting to communicate with, and hopefully, build a rapport and get through to a good solution on something, or at least have a really valued conversation with at the end of the day. So those sort of things are important, is to make sure that our face is unwound and they're not stressed and tensed out when we're talking to them, because that can obviously be very very off-putting. Also, if we're fidgeting, as I said earlier, with phones, pieces of clothing, whatever it is, looking away, distracted by noises that are going on around us, then that can also be very off-putting when we're involved in communicating with others and getting our message across. One of the other things that's important to reflect upon in communication, some people say, that's why we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, is listen, 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 talk. And it's not a bad mantra to have, is to do more listening than we do talking where possible. Now, we don't want to talk so little and not get our point across that we come across quite passive, or someone is left not knowing what we're thinking or what our ideas about, or we haven't been open and transparent with them. That's not the idea. But in listening to others, it's a really good opportunity to be with them, to understand them, and to let them know that we are empathic with them, that we are trying to understand where they're coming from, what the issues are for them, the message that they're trying to get through to them, what is worrying them, what has gone well, what is good about what has just happened, etc. But that we are interested in really understanding and being with them, and once again having a respectful communication process that we go through with them to hopefully build a rapport, but also to then hopefully set up a scenario that the next time we get together, we have already set up a scenario where we can set the context and then deliver the content of the communication. And we can do that pretty fluently and in a manner that allows us to be, in as simple a manner as possible, that allows us to be very authentic and open, because we know how that person likes to communicate, and we have already built up a trusting relationship. And that's the other thing about communication, is that if we spend time building trust with others, that they know we will speak our mind, they know we will ask their opinion, we know we're as interested in their points of view as we are in our own, then that sets the scene for down the track to be able to have many of those conversations. And also, if we have a conversation that we don't think has gone well, reflect upon it ourselves and feel where it might not have gone well, and then sit down with the person and once again get some feedback from them, reflect to them the way we might be feeling about it, and get some feedback from them about how they might be feeling about it, and to make sure that we indicate to someone else that we're using this as a learning opportunity, and we certainly didn't want them to get the wrong idea, or we didn't mean for them to be embarrassed or anything by what we were saying. But we were in retrospect, when we look back, we just figured that maybe what I said may have been taken or able to be taken in the wrong manner. And if we have said something that we believe was wrong, apologise. But don't apologise for everything we've said, and get into this thing where every second word we say is I apologise, I apologise, I apologise. Other people have to run their responsibility for their feelings, and we run our responsibility for our feeling. But if we feel that we have gone overboard, or that we've gone outside of a mutual respect boundaries, then it is useful to communicate. So that's all that we really have time for today. Thank you again for being a part of the webinar. Thanks for listening. I hope that it's been a good opportunity to reflect upon areas of communication that sometimes we just take for granted, and away we go, and we run ourselves on automatic pilot, and we do it habitually how we've communicated before. And if it's working well, that's great. But reflective practice, every now and then sitting back and thinking about how we're communicating with others, is critically important, because so much in life goes wrong because of poor communication. So much in life goes wrong and is taken in the wrong context and leads to conflict because we just haven't taken the time, or others haven't taken the time to communicate respectably, adaptably, flexibly, positively, and solution focused in the manner in which we go about ourselves. Human beings spend a lot of time communicating with each other, and we need to do it in a very rational perspective, and reflect upon how we're going, and make sure we fine-tune the skills that are involved in interpersonal relationships and effective communication. So all the very best for the rest of the day. Thank you for being part of this Psych Up webinar, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. And in the meantime, take care and keep pursuing being the best you can be.